Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, is that severe? Should he get out?
Well, Neil, it's good to be with you. And I have to say, by the way, I was impressed to hear that you're launching your papal hedge fund.
Yes, yes. I was startled by that. I was startled. By the way, who do you think was the best pope for the markets?
You tell me.
Benedict.
Interesting.
Benedict, almost 5%. But I digress.
Although I have to admit, I'm a fan of John Paul II.
Yes.
And winning the Cold War alongside Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, it's really tough to beat that.
Stopping a mutual fund any day. I will grant you that. But what do you make of this? I mean, there's all sorts of... Ben Carson has not dialed any of this back. What do you think of that? A Muslim shouldn't be President of the United States.
Well, listen, I like Ben Carson. I think Ben is fantastic. I think a lot of people are just using this as an opportunity to smack him with a stick. My view is straightforward. I mean, the Constitution says there shall be no religious test for holding public office, and I'm a constitutionalist. But I think this whole noise is obscuring the broader question. The broader question, and what I think Ben was trying to get at, is what have the consequences been in the last 6.5 years of the Obama presidency? Because we've seen a weak president who's withdrawn from the world, and that has set the stage for the rise of radical Islamic terrorism. And we have a president right now, President Obama is unwilling to utter the words radical Islamic terrorism. And that has a consequence. The consequence of not being willing to address that is that our policies are not directed towards defeating it.
But I understand what you're saying then, Senator. You would not have a problem with a Muslim as President of the United States. There's no one running, no one considering running of that persuasion. But you would not have a problem.
Listen, under the Constitution, there can be no religious test for holding public office. What there can be a test on is public policy views. You look at President Obama. You know, in the past couple of days, there was a big kerfuffle about Donald Trump at a town hall and someone asking about President Obama's religion.
Right.
And you know, my view on that is the president's faith is between him and God. But his policies, we can assess how his policies have impacted this country. President Obama's policies domestically, he has led an assault on religious liberty, and particularly an assault on Christians. You know, a few weeks ago, I hosted a huge religious liberty rally in Iowa. We had 2,500 people come out. And 9 heroes came up and told their stories. People who had stood up for their faith and been persecuted. And they shared their stories. They'd lost their jobs. They'd faced death threats. The whole thing I have up on my website, tedcruz.org. If you want to watch it, it is powerful and uplifting. And I think the president's policy of targeting our religious liberty is wrong. Likewise, I think when you look abroad, not only has this president not been willing to go after, call out radical Islamic terrorism by its name, but at times President Obama has acted as an apologist for radical Islamic terrorism.
Do you think that comments like those out of Dr. Carson, who wouldn't dial it back, says he still thinks that you put your right hand on a Bible when you get sworn in as president? You think that's just all side theater?
I think the media noise is a complete distraction. But let me give you an example. When I said President Obama is an apologist, you may remember earlier when President Obama spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast. And this was, the King of Jordan was scheduled to speak there, but he had to fly back to Jordan because the day before ISIS had taken a Jordanian pilot, put him in a cage, and lit him on fire. And President Obama gave a speech. I was sitting at the prayer breakfast where he said, listen, yes, ISIS is committing acts of terror, but he said Christians and Jews have committed acts of terror as well. And he invoked the Crusades and the Inquisition.
Yes, I remember.
Now, last I checked, the Crusades ended 900 years ago. I don't think it's asking too much to ask this president to stay in the current millennium. And the reason I said it's being an apologist is because that argument is the exact same argument that the terrorists use. ISIS, when they are beheading Christians, when they're crucifying Christians, they invoke the Crusades and the Inquisition, and we need a president of the United States.
But a lot of your colleagues have pointed out that the most heinous terror acts against Americans have been perpetrated by Muslims. So that maybe there was something to what Carson was saying. You say?
Well, no. There's something to radical Islamic terrorism. You know, you have on your desk Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney's new book, Exceptional. I just finished reading it. It's a fantastic book. Does a terrific job. There is a pernicious theology and philosophy, jihadism, radical Islamism, that views the extreme dictates of Sharia as a mandate to forcibly convert or murder anyone who disagrees. And we need to take that on in every manifestation.
Understand. You know, as we're Senator, I wasn't meaning to give you a slide here. We're hearing that Governor Scott Walker is planning to hold a news conference today at the Edgewater Hotel in Madison. It's 5 p.m. Central Time, so I think that's 6 p.m.
Wow.
A couple hours from now. Separately, we were hearing reports by Ed Rollins, who was saying to our Liz Clayman on Fox Business Network, which if you don't get, you should have met, Senator, that he's going to drop out of the race.
Holy cow. Well, look, if that's true, that's big news. Governor Walker is a very good man. He's done a good job as governor in Wisconsin, so we'll wait and see what news he makes. But that
we don't know.
Big deal.
To your point, we don't know, but we do know that he has slid precipitously in the polls, from running away with Iowa, a neighboring state where he's all but a favorite son, to now, I think if we have the latest poll figures, Pam, he's in single digits at that. Polls giveth and taketh away very fast. You're kind of bunched up in the middle of that pack. But how do you think the race possibly weeding out so quickly, long before we even get to the opening caucus?
Well, look, I'm very encouraged by where we stand right now. You know, coming out of both debates, both the Fox debate and CNN debate, our momentum has been incredible. And in fact,
how's the money been?
Well, coming out of the Fox debate, in the first 100 hours, we raised over $1 million. Coming out of the CNN debate, we more than doubled that. We raised $1 million in 48 hours. I mean, our fundraising exploded. People went to tedcruz.org. They contributed online. You know, we did a bus tour after the first debate throughout the South, throughout the Super Tuesday, what they're calling the SEC primary. We had 19,000 people come out there. I mean, people are hungry. And, you know, you look at the whole Donald Trump thing.
Still hungry. In other words, you still are able to raise money, because the early reporting we were getting on Scott Walker, and again, all this might be premature, Senator, is that he certainly had a lot of money coming in, a lot of financial commitments coming in, but that lately it's been freezing up. It might have been a Trump phenomenon. It might have been people sorting out, waiting how this field goes post-Trump. So there's others, but that his was particularly problematic because it did just freeze up.
Well, I think that happened to a lot of the candidates. I think a lot of the candidates are having a hard time raising money. As you know, our campaign raised more money than any Republican candidate in the field. In the first 2 quarters, we raised $14.3 million.
And none of your donors have gotten back to the Senator. We're anxious here.
Not only that, we're getting phone calls from donors from a lot of the other candidates who are looking around and saying, listen, our guy's headed south. It's not happening for the guy we backed initially, and they're coming on board with us. You know, when you raise $1 million in 48 hours coming out of a debate, that's a pretty powerful indication that people are looking for someone, that they're tired of people who just are campaign conservatives. They talk a good game, but they haven't walked the walk.
All right, but Donald Trump, with whom you've not had any spats that I know of, and you two get along very, very well, he is apparently set to come out with a book next month on the 27th. It so happens to be the birthday of Teddy Roosevelt, a populist Republican, to put it mildly. And that in that he might spell out things like tax increases for the super wealthy, removing tax breaks for hedge fund managers. I only say this, Senator, because it is not very Republican conservative-esque. Right. Now, you're pretty conservative. Does that jibe with Ted Cruz, someone who would advocate for a tax hike or to punish companies that ship jobs overseas?
You know, I think Donald Trump's campaign has been unbelievably beneficial for my campaign. And the biggest reason is, you know, I'm a big fan of Sun Tzu, who said every battle is won before it's fought. It's won by choosing the terrain on which the battle will be fought. But he never raised taxes on anyone, Sun Tzu. I don't know. Well, I think he just invaded and conquered them instead. But, you know, what Trump has framed the central question of this election as is who will stand up to Washington, to the Washington cartel, to the career politicians
in both parties. But if he's right, he's standing up to the Republican Party, right, Senator? Well, he is advocating. You never have the possibility of a tax hike and to punish businesses that try to hire abroad.
And you're absolutely right. I do not support a tax hike. I think we ought to create the most competitive business market in the world. You know, politicians like to talk about corporate inversions when headquarters are leaving America and going to other countries. If I'm elected president at the end of my tenure, other countries will be talking about corporate inversions because you will see so many businesses, so many jobs coming to America because we'll create a tax and regulatory
But you would be willing to challenge him on that?
Look, we'll see. If he calls for a tax increase, I disagree with him on it. But I'll say this. His framing the question as who will stand up to Washington leads to the natural next question. Who has a record of standing up to Washington? And there's no one in the field that has done so the way I have.
All right. I'm sorry, Senator. We can now confirm that Scott Walker is dropping out of the 2016 presidential race. Fox News can confirm these early rumors, first raised by Ed Rollins on Fox Business Network. He's going to announce he will drop out of the race in less than 2 hours from now. A real turnaround for a guy who was an early favorite for this nomination because of his battle with unions, and he faced the voters 3 times in his state, little more than 4 years. That was then. This is now. Scott Walker is going to announce he's hanging it up. Now there, Senator, again, someone who had no shortage of money, but fundraisers were getting nervous that he wasn't bringing his A game, particularly in Iowa. Where is your A game? Does your A game have to be in Iowa? Does it have to be in New Hampshire? Do you have to win one of those? What?
You know, I think we are very unusually situated because there are a number of candidates that have to win Iowa to be viable. There are other candidates who have to win New Hampshire. I don't think we have to win any of the early states, but unlike most of the field, we are very well positioned at Iowa. We've got an incredible leadership team. I think the strongest leadership team on the ground.
So you're saying even if you don't win Iowa, even if you don't win New Hampshire, you're still going on. You would, you'd have to do second or third in one or both states,
I think we are positioned where we can win in Iowa, we can win in New Hampshire, we can win in South Carolina. I think we will do well in all 3. I think we'll do well in Nevada. But then 10 days after South Carolina is Super Tuesday. It's the SEC primary.
Right.
And these are all southern states. They're evangelical states. They're conservative states. And I think we're extraordinarily well positioned.
So South Carolina could be a strong state for you?
South Carolina,
Florida, maybe. That's a Bush-Rubio battle.
Florida will be late. You look at March 1st.
But that's a winner-take-all state.
It is, but March 1st, you've got Georgia, you've got Alabama, you've got Tennessee, you've got Arkansas, you've got Oklahoma,
but do you think,
got
Senator,
Texas.
you could get to Cleveland and we don't have a Republican nominee because there'll still be enough of you in the race, even with Rick Perry out, even conceivably today with Scott Walker out?
You know, I think it's possible, but I think it's unlikely. I think in this race, there are basically 2 lanes. There's an establishment lane and there's a conservative lane. And part of the reason that I'm so encouraged and that we're seeing so much momentum is that I think conservatives are uniting around our campaign. And I think it will end up being a strong conservative versus a more moderate establishment candidate. And in the moderate establishment lane is getting crowded as all get out.
It is, but you've held your own, certainly, but you haven't had that breakout moment. And I know these debates, it's hard to do that. Senator Chris Christie's complained about it. Rand Paul's complained about it. I guess you've complained about it. Maybe you only get that if you have fewer entrants in the race, right?
Well, look, the debates right now, both debates, they've been looking for a food fight. You know, most of the questions follow the format of, you know, so-and-so says you're a stinky head. Respond.
Right. Well, worse than that. Worse than that.
Look, I think most American people couldn't care less. Okay. I won't engage in the food fight.
All right.
And I'm not going to throw rocks. I'm going to keep the focus on substance. But our support is systematic and steady.
Gotcha. Ted Cruz, thank you.